finds surplus produce and utilizes volunteers to distribute it to food assistance programs across North Texas. Before starting the Gleaning Network, Susie worked as the Texas Program Director for the Society of St. Andrew. Through her work with farmers and social service agencies, she developed a passion for high-quality and organic food, equitable access, and local and urban agriculture. She is currently serving as the president of the Texas Organic Farmers and Gardeners Association, and she's a native Dallasite, has a master's degree in health and physical education from Texas A&M Commerce, and a master's in theological studies from Perkins School of Theology at SMU. So I'd like to please help me welcome Susie Marshall.
Thanks for being here, guys. I was thinking, this is not a comment that's meant to be derogatory towards anybody. It's kind of where food is on the agenda in most cities in the country. Kind of the size of the crowd kind of indicates the level of concern about our food system right now. There's pockets of high concern in the general public, even in sustainable. I talk to people in sustainable business, green businesses. If you start talking about food, they can get a blank look on their face. It's like, oh, we need to be concerned about that because why? But the interesting thing is the American Planning Association, people that do city planning, the national organization has put food on their agenda. They're concerned about food, so that's a very good sign. But thanks to you all, and thanks to Ron Kim and the Faith Voices Committee for inviting me. It's an honor to be here. I've been kind of looking forward to the chance to get in front of a group and say what I really think. It's not often that I get a chance to do that. The world of food, community food, and farming has a wide variety of people and opinions, and sometimes I have to tread carefully. It's kind of an interesting place to be. And these, let's just say that these are my opinions and not necessarily the opinions of the Gleaning Network or the Texas Organic Farmers and Gardeners. But I hope that I can say something that's meaningful and helpful to everybody. As y'all know, it's Father's Day Day. Good Methodist, it's Father's Day Day. It's the anniversary of John Wesley's heartwarming experience at our Father's Day. So maybe it'll be a little bit of channeling. First, how I ended up where I am. I am a cradle Methodist, as they say. I'm a preacher's kid. And over the years, I really kind of found that I can't shed that Methodist ethos, that Wesleyan DNA. And I kind of learned that more when I studied Wesley's sermons. There's something unique about Methodism. And this combination of vital piety and social holiness, the personal relationship with God and the community involvement. And to me, that's very important, and I think sometimes we don't value that uniqueness enough. So I'm going to speak from that lens, if that's okay with y'all. After college, I went to Texas Wesleyan over in Fort Worth, went to a good Methodist school. I headed to get a master's degree in health and physical education at what was then East Texas State, and in commerce. And so I ended up with a teaching and coaching job. That's what I was going to do. I was a teaching coach, and I ended up in a little town outside of Sulphur Springs. And I wasn't totally prepared for what I was going to experience when I got there. But I was also only 24 when I started the job. But I loved being in the country. I loved the setting, the dairy farms, lots of open land, trucks, slow pace, small school, and different expectations. But I survived 2 years of a job that should have been 2 people's jobs, should have been split, or at least 1.5 people. But and I tell you this because it gets me. It's part of the journey that got me where I am. So I learned a lot in that experience, and it actually, my time in Sulphur Springs actually gave me the benefit of knowing the agriculture community, knowing what that's like, and how they function and what they value. And that's paid off later on. So I really can't, I don't begrudge any of the experiences that I had there. So while I was living in Sulphur Springs trying to figure out where I wanted to be when I grew up, I met the director of the Texas office of the Society of St. Andrew, which is, a Methodist-related organization that does gleaning. They're based in Virginia, and they've been around since 78, I think, 1978. And their primary purpose is finding surplus produce and getting it to food assistance programs. So I met the director. Several months later, he tracked me down, still living in Silver Springs, and asked if I was interested in the program director's job. And at the time, I was unemployed, so yes, I was very interested in the job. And then he ended up being at the job. So basically what we do with Gleaning, if you're not familiar, is that we work with farmers, we work with wholesale distributors also, to capture the surplus that's still edible, what's on the farm after the harvest, that can't be sold, that isn't pretty enough, isn't the right size, for whatever the reason. We take it and, using mostly volunteer labor, we get it distributed to food pantries, to kitchen shelters, and other churches that distribute formal and informal programs. Right now we have field gleaning has not been so great thanks to the drought and other things, weather-related mostly. But we have a relationship with Nogales Produce, and in the last year that yielded about 1 million pounds of surplus just from that one produce house in Dallas. And it's estimated that 20% of everything that's grown in the U.S. never makes it to be eaten. And that's pre-prepared food. I mean, that's before you get to the kitchen to cook it. So that's about 96 billion pounds a year that goes to waste. And we're not even talking about what restaurants throw away after that. So there's a lot of food out there to be had. So once I had the job, this was 2003, I had the job with the Society of St. Andrew, trying to figure out how to establish gleaning programs in the state of Texas. There was one here in the North Texas area and had a couple other sort of operations, and it's a daunting task to try to work within the state of Texas. It didn't take me long to figure out, though, that this is the kind of work I wanted to do. I wanted to be working with these issues and this kind of stuff. And it didn't take me very long either to learn that there was more to just feeding people, more than just putting the Band-Aid on feeding that person for the day. Then in 2006, the Society of St. Andrew decided to close their Texas office, and I decided I wasn't clear what I was doing, so I went to some of our advisory board members and volunteers and said, hey, will you help me? Let me start this organization. And they agreed, and we created the Gleaning Network. We were off to a great start, and then the economy in 2008 happened, and funding sources changed, and the world of food and farming has changed in the last 8 to 9 years. We've seen a change in the size and scope of farms in the area. We've gone from truck farms that maybe have, one crop, 30, 40, 100 acres of one crop. Those have gone out of business, and what's replacing it slowly are small family farms that are 2 to 5 to 10 acres maybe, producing a variety of fruits and vegetables. The situation of surplus has changed too. It's kind of a complex issue. But what I've held on to and what has opened up to me is the world of community food. And I've really discovered that's where I want to be. And I'll say a little bit more about that in a minute. Through my experiences with Gleaning, I've learned a lot more about the food bank system. If I'm being cynical, I refer to it as the food bank industrial complex. I have learned more about issues in poverty and all its complexity. And I began, like a lot of us, to learn about the connection between highly processed foods and obesity and chronic diseases like diabetes and heart disease. It did not take me too long to realize that food insecure people deserve better than shelf-stable, highly processed food and sugary drinks. It's not enough to say, well, at least they're getting enough calories. That just became not okay anymore. Because their bodies are not getting the food that they need to be fully functioning members of society. So I began my learning process, and I knew I wanted to do something more, but it wasn't until January of last year, 2011, that I discovered the term community food and community food security. And community food is not just about feeding people. It's about creating a just food system. And it's about a food system that provides nutritionally adequate, culturally appropriate food through a sustainable food system that maximizes community, self-reliance, and social justice. that includes community gardens, farmers markets, creative urban agriculture programs, education in nutrition and food preparation, and local production agriculture as part of providing equitable access to healthy fresh fruits and vegetables for those who don't usually have that access. It also understands that those issues of food insecurity and hunger are part of the issue of poverty and all of those kinds of social issues. So we're actually working on expanding the Gleaning Network to be a food systems organization. We're working on programs that will teach garden education, support local agriculture, do cooking and nutrition education. Along the way in all of this, I got into the leadership of the organic farming organization here in Texas. Dallas is behind the rest of the country. There's a listserv called Home Food, Community Food Listserv, and I get at least 10 emails a day about either people posting an article or a job or an activity, something related to community food all around the country, but not here. There is an organization in Austin that is doing great work with sustainable food service. But community food is bubbling up in Dallas. Local agriculture is increasing. We had conversations at the dinner table about the farmers market and all those issues. And so it's starting, it's getting there. So here I am in this position. And ironically, there's a woman who started a farm lobby organization called the Farm Ranch Street Alliance. She advocates for small farms. She's a Jewish kid who grew up down the street, like Northaven. And we just found this out a couple weeks ago. And so here we are, two city girls, two North Dallas girls who believe in social justice, trying to organize a bunch of Texas farmers. And I just thought, God's got to be giggling at that that's the situation. But it is, and it's fun. So this whole food thing is kind of fascinating because it's the one thing that has come. Since we all eat, we all need food to survive. Our bodies are affected in similar ways by what we put into them. And it really fascinates me that people do come from diverse places to get to where we all are. We come from different angles, viewpoints, and perspectives. And I deal with Tea Party members, I deal with Ron Paul libertarians, and liberal atheists, and everything in between. So that's why I said I'm really excited to be able to say what I think. But I've learned that food is a very unifying thing also. It's very interesting to watch people kind of come together as a group. When we were out in the field one day gleaning, it's kind of when I realized this was with a group from East Texas, from Northaven UMC, north of Mount Vernon, where that is. There were a few volunteers, and I just remember the group kind of being reversed, maybe not all knowing each other. I can't remember if they were from different places or what, but I remember we got into a conversation with bagging sweet potatoes. And we got into a conversation about sweet potatoes, and who liked them, and who never really grew up eating them, and what was their favorite recipe. And all of a sudden, we had something in common, because we could all talk about sweet potatoes in one way or another. We could all talk about food. Well, then my grandmother had this recipe that I just loved. And suddenly the playing field is level, because we all eat, and we all have food memories. So it's a really powerful kind of thing. But food has always been a great connector. For the Israelites, it was sacramental. It was part of the feasts and festivals. They celebrated their food. It was a blessing. And food played a role in hospitality. For the Israelites, if a stranger came by, you were supposed to invite them in and feed them. That was the right thing to do. It also meant that person was kind of obligated to help protect you if you needed it in the future, but still, it was centered around food. Shannon Young states in his book, Food for Life, that for the Israelites, hospitality became an expression of the covenant relationship with God and human beings. And as Christians, of course, we have the Last Supper, we have church potlucks, we have family meals. There's that joke that every time Methodists get together, there has to be food. It's important. Community is built around the table. And of course, there's communion as a symbol of our connectedness to God and Jesus, but through a meal together. expresses and generates intimacy with others. It's important to our life. Food is important to our lives. Good food is necessary. We know it's necessary for children's growth and development. Social skills are learned at meal times. And yet, we have children that are not fed at night because their families don't have enough to eat. We have over 16% of Texans that are food insecure. It's about 1 in 6 of us. If we had an equal sampling of Texas, every 6th person would be food insecure in this room. For Texas, that means 3.8 million, I think. There's one statistic, but then I saw 5.5 million the other day. So somewhere in the several millions in Texas, just in Texas, that are worried about where their food is coming from. Food insecure folks will probably eat, but may not get enough. A mother may skip a meal so that there's enough for her children, and there's often true hunger associated with food insecurity in our communities. When our basic needs are not met, we can't be full participants in community. In addition to food insecurity, we have 65% of the country that's overweight or obese. In Dallas, 26% of us are obese. We have a proliferance of fast food. We have even restaurants with wait staffs and food quality. I don't know if y'all noticed, but the food quality in the last 10, 12 years has just plummeted in most restaurants. Our fruits and vegetables come from around the world. We have no way of really knowing what kinds of chemicals were used on them. We farm in monocrops in parts of the country that can't sustain that model for very much longer. We kill all kinds of species with pesticides, herbicides, and fertilizers. And we have dozens of food products made from corn because corn has been made cheap through the crop subsidy program. Did y'all know that the Farm Bill doesn't subsidize, except maybe 2% of the money from Farm Bill subsidies, but so 98% is, start again. Farm Bill subsidies do not support those that grow our fruits and vegetables. About 2% of that money goes towards farmers that are growing that fruits and vegetables. We've made our food cheap because, everyone wants everyday low prices, right? We have the cheapest food in the industrialized nations, but we also have the highest rate of obesity and overweight. So we're in this weird place. We have genetically modified foods. The latest one is Agent Orange corn. You don't heard about Agent Orange corn? Yeah, that's the latest one that's come up. They're actually trying to create or get approved a corn that can be sprayed with Agent Orange to kill off the weeds. And I thought we figured out that that was not good. That's not good for use. So something's wrong. We have the issue of the industrial food system, which we could spend hours on by itself. We seem to have a lack of value for our food. So kind of hold that thought. We have the food bank system, which I have kind of a love-hate relationship with. They really do a good job of doing what they do. They really do a good job of warehousing and distributing food to people. And part of my love-hate relationship is that they take a lot of the money, and they take a lot of the attention to doing something, to distributing food, when our rates of food insecurity have not changed since 1996 when they started keeping the records. So we have a system that is very efficient, works very well, but it's not solving any problems. And there's kind of a dichotomy in the anti-hunger food world. There are two different approaches to dealing with hunger. There's the anti-hunger community, and there's the community food community. So you have anti-hunger, which is food banking, which is making use of federal programs. We have 15 federal feeding programs. We've got SNAP, which is food stamps, if you don't familiar with that acronym yet. We've got WIC. We have farmers markets, a little nutrition program. There's school lunches, summer lunch, senior food programs, which are all wonderful. We need those programs. We need those things to feed people because it is important to feed people on a daily basis. But that's where the looking for solutions stops in the anti-hunger community. They're about making use of the federal programs, which we should use. And I heard a statistic, I think Texas left $15 million on the table last year in federal monies. I think it went out of the state. I think that's the right number. A lot of money. And we could be feeding people on a daily basis with that. However, when you stop to think about it, if we're not changing food insecurity rates, we've got to do something different. And that's where community food looks at it differently. They look to other solutions. They look to the system. What's wrong that people are continuing to need a program that's considered emergency, but it's been considered emergency since the 80s when it started. So how can we begin to help people grow more food, have access? What systems can be put in place? What do we need to do to help people know how within their schedules to prepare a meal that's healthy for their families? What strategies can we use from that angle to change the systems and behaviors that will help those people? And of course, there's the recognition that really what we need are better wages and all those kinds of things. But we have to work with what we have in other ways. So community food does not take away from those federal programs, makes use of those. But in addition, let's see what else we can do to better people's food intake at home and in the community. And those programs are proving to be beneficial to communities. Community gardens themselves are showing to reduce crime simply by having green in the community. They don't necessarily produce a lot of food, but they build community. Detroit and Cleveland, the inner cities of those two places are being saved by urban agriculture and community food programs. Programs where you have a garden, a farm, a mini farm, a micro farm in the city where people can come and work and they leave with food. That's how they earn their food, is they come into work and take food home. It's a great way. If you've got a group of people who are going to be unemployed, but they're capable of working, here's a way for them to help be self-sufficient within the community, as part of the community. In a book called Sweet Charity that was recommended to me, it's by Janet Poppendike. She talks about the history of the food banking world and how it came to be this institutionalized thing that it is. She sets out at the beginning by stating the premise that while kindness and sharing has risen, we're actually less just than we were before. We have, this book was written in 1998, but it was amazingly still very relevant. She makes the case that the impetus that started the food bank phenomenon was a good one. Make use of surplus food and feed those who are hungry. But it's evolved into a system that allows many people to participate in the solution and makes us all feel good. But really, if we're not changing those statistics, then are we really working on the solution? So emergency food system has become an acceptable icon for caring for hungry people. And when you work in an area that can't touch the monies that the food bank gets, you get a little cynical sometimes too. But it has become institutionalized. This Big East does a really good job. Poppendike says that if the food bank industry was a for-profit company, it would be a Fortune 500 company. They report efficiency, they figure out how to do this very well, but somehow it's not making it better. And she hits on something that I've been unable to really articulate until recently, and that's the idea of charity versus justice. We have a gazillion different ways in which people can get involved in volunteer organizations, and I've had wonderful groups of volunteers. But sometimes it's a situation where those volunteers come in and they work for a day, and they feel really good about it, and then they go back to their regular lives. And sometimes the project doesn't necessarily do something that's really beneficial for that group. We had a couple years ago, I was working with an after-school program over the Roseland community that was through City Square, and we started a garden there. So there was a company, I can't remember who it was, wanted to do their day service at Roseland, and City Square at the time had a after-school program. They had for elementary kids, they had a youth program, and they had a community, they were running the community cemetery. So they had some programming there. So this company had a nonprofit from another city come in with young people, with AmeriCorps members, to plan the baby service here in Dallas, which I thought was interesting. That was strange. I've never experienced that before. The group did a good job of planning, but they came and they took over the community center, so the whole programming had to stop. All the regular community programming had to stop for this year to come in. And the group did some painting in various parts of the complex, which was great. It was very pretty. They did a really good job. They were going to dig a new garden bed for us, which was great. Terrific con. The young woman that I was working with said she'd done gardens before, so she was okay. We didn't talk much. I should have thought about the composition of black gumbo clay soil, and that she might not be familiar with it. You know how some gardens have raised beds? We ended up with a lower bed because we took so much dirt out, taking the grass out, and they had only had just a few bags of topsoil to put that in. So it was a learning experience. Was the whole project helpful? Yes. Did it benefit the people and make them feel good and the company look good? Yeah, it did. Did it provide any long-lasting benefit for the kids in the program at Roseland? No, not really. That program is now not there anymore for various reasons, but those are the examples of things that a lot of time happen. Poppendike points out that charity is not something you do for somebody who sees evil. And we spend a lot of time in our community doing charity. And I think some level, I know I talk to people around here that comes to Northaven that struggle with that issue of, well, do we go work on a house that day and do good, or do we do something that is involved in long lasting? So I think we all struggle with that. It's interesting, Poppendike tells a story in her book about going and stopping at a food pantry. She was on her way to a weekend retreat and saw this food pantry, decided to get one last interview in on her book, and she usually called ahead, and she hadn't done that this time, but she hadn't stopped. And so she comes in and just took out her clothes and kind of fumbles around trying to figure out how to tell the guy, the pastor, what she's there for. He says, "Do you need food?" And she said she suddenly realized that what it must be like, the humiliation that she felt just being asked that question, what it must feel like to have to go to a food pantry and ask for help. She said, even in the hospitable and undemanding atmosphere where an assertion of need was the only requirement, the whole weight of our culture's attitude towards those who need help came crashing down on me. I was being offered charity, not an earned recompense for earlier contributions, not an entitlement based on our mutual interdependence, but a gift, even in response to my very deficit. I felt profoundly my powerlessness, my inadequacy, and something verging on shame. She goes on to talk about kind of the different connotations of charity and how it can be a really positive thing, but for others it's a very negative thing. And she talks about the growing inequality in our society, which she saw in 1998, which hasn't gotten any better. She points out the fact that the charitable giver is not responsible for providing assistance equitably. If you give, you can give at your own whim. And it doesn't allow the recipient any rights in that charity system. We've created a society in which substantial numbers of people are dependent for their very subsistence on the kindness of strangers and the whims of givers. We've lost equality economically, but it seems to me that we've lost a sense that we're all equal and deserve certain rights, even though we often talk about that as being something that our country values. We've created an entire segment of society that's seen as one big charity case, or have we done that? Have we created this for ourselves? Part of our communities are charity cases, and then we can easily feel resentment towards them because they're not doing anything, but yet we've put this on them as being second class. So it sounds like we're kind of a mess. We have cheap food, we have an obesity epidemic, we have an industrial food system that's a little bit out of control, and we have way more feel-good charity than justice. So what are we going to do about it? We've got some things within our faith that gives us some direction. You know, God created the earth and gave humankind dominion over it. And yes, we can argue the definition of dominion, but I don't think that God would want us to be the ones to destroy God's creation and God's creatures. I just can't. That doesn't jive with my concept of who God is. Our world works in amazing ways by itself. If you let things happen, the world works. The ecosystems that we don't even understand are amazingly efficient at dealing with the natural situations. We could be working with the earth and not against it. The soil, just a little bit of soil biology that I've learned is amazing and complex and intricate in the way you feed the leaves of a plant that sends signals down through the roots out, and the beneficial microbes come to those roots. And how that happens is just, it's part of that mystery of the world and of life that we are not valuing. We're not thinking it's important. The Old Testament talks more about caring for the poor, the widow, the orphan than it talks about anything else yet. We don't do that very well. And why not? Why don't we work for more? Why don't more people in our communities work for more policies, for more just policies? I know it's a scary thing to speak out for other people, but Jesus gives us a commandment to love God and love neighbor and love ourselves. And that everything in the Old Testament law and all of the prophets point to that one thing. I was actually told one time, I was asked a question I've never been asked before in an interview, that asked what scriptures drive my ministry. I've never been asked that question before. And I had come up with an answer, so I came up with the Great Commandment. I thought it was pretty good. Look, well, no, I think you probably should find something more specific than that. Really, you need anything more than trying to figure out how to make that simple yet complex commandment work in our lives. We're never going to be perfect at it, but are we doing things that in our lives that are loving for others? Are we behaving in ways and supporting things that are positive for other people or hurtful? How are we doing that? What do we do? We pay attention to it. My friend and mentor Mark Whitney opened his portion of a plenary session at a community food conference with a slightly snarky statement saying, God created the earth, but God did not create community food security, which I personally love that statement. But when I told him I liked it, he said, oh, well, a religious woman that I know got on to me for that because she thought I was being blasphemous. And I said, no, it's great. It perfectly states our role as people on earth and of faith in working with God. That God didn't create the earth, but God did not create community food security. That's our job. And if you've been through Living Questions or read any of Crossing the Board, and even heard or saw a reference from Brian McLaren today, talking about participatory eschatology. And if you haven't studied theological terminology, which there might be a few of you in the room who have not, eschatology has to do with the end or the afterlife, or the ultimate destiny of humankind, as Merriam-Webster says. So it's about bringing in the kingdom of God, or heaven on earth, or however you're comfortable talking about that. Participatory eschatology is basically the idea that God needs us. We work with God to create a world that God's love will create. Not somewhere in the future, not in heaven, but right here, where we are. So do we live a faith that's acting in our communities? Do we do things? Do we participate? All those questions that come to mind. Do we value our communities enough to take our faith and put them out there, especially around food, because it's such a basic part of life? It's our job to work for greater community food security and greater equality. It's our job to help people figure out how to break some of the cycles of poverty that communities are in. We don't need to do it for these people, we need to work with them, participate with them. So about a year ago, I was working with a group that was talking about food policy in Dallas, and they came up with this acronym. I'm not sure they knew exactly how significant what they created was, but they created something that kind of represents an idea of food system. The acronym is SHUT. It stands for Secure, Healthy, Open, vibrant, equitable, and local. And so later on, I had to put meat to those bones. And so I've got this little thing that talks about what an ideal food system is. It's a secure food system with healthy food that comes from a variety of areas. It's healthy food, little processing, people have experiences growing, harvesting food. It's an open food system that allows lots of participation, microeconomies, micro enterprises, that helps everyone have access to food. It's vibrant. It's a system that values locally produced, and it recognizes that the local food economy is something special and unique. We have our own growing season here in North Texas that's different. We're like 2-3 weeks different than Austin and Brenham and down that way. We have our own stuff that grows really well here. So we should value that. It should be celebrated. It should be an equitable food system, one that emphasizes healthy eating habits and equal access for better overall health and wellness. It's local. It's a secure system that's produced locally. We value that local input. And the local system is going to provide a stronger economy. So what can we do? What kinds of things can we actually do? First, we can eat real food, like what we did tonight. I don't know if you've heard Michael Pollan's food-like substances term. A lot of that can be found in grocery stores. We process and nutritionalize our way into unhealthy foods, and he refers to those as food-like substances. The best way to get your nutrients, the best way to get nutrients in your body is from real food. Just because something has the vitamins added, minerals added back in, doesn't mean your body's going to process it as well. And you're also supporting big ag when you buy processed foods. Big ag, Conagra, Monsanto, I can't think of the other companies off the top of my head. They control a lot of the supply chain. They have huge lobbies. They often are working against smaller farms because they don't have the heavier regulations on them. But they don't care for the factory workers either. Second thing you can do is support local agriculture by buying local. And I don't say that because I have friends who are farmers. But local agriculture tends to be smaller scale. It's naturally a more just way. You've got fewer people working. You've got employment opportunities happening. But it's a smaller situation. Nobody's getting corporate bonuses, and I know that for sure. I can assure you that from my friends. But small farms understand the need to make a living at something, and they're going to provide a job that provides something that is as stable as they can do, that's a fair wage, even if they're providing, if it's part of the deal is providing housing and food, and we can pay you just a little bit. It's going to be a fair situation. Obviously, there's less fuel that's used, so it's nice for the environment. If you're bringing something in from Gulf Springs, it's a lot less gas used than from China or California. Every dollar you spend in the local food economy puts $3 back in. So you can always vote with your fork by what you eat and what you buy. We've got sustainable and organic and sustainable practices locally. You have to be certified. Everybody's really concerned about organic certification. There are lots of great farms that are not certified and never will be certified, but they're doing more than the National Organic Standards requires. And local and urban agriculture has got to be part of fixing the food desert problem and the access problem. We had a matrix of small micro farms and market gardens and all kinds of urban agriculture programs in South Dallas. Those would no longer be considered food deserts. You wouldn't have to have a Walmart that came in to solve the problem because you have people doing it themselves. The third thing you can do is support local organizations that are doing food systems work. So any program that's working on a community garden, something that's teaching people how to grow, looking at creative solutions, to get better quality food in schools, a whole other aspect. You want to support those that are actually working on things. No, you should not stop giving to your local food pantry. Metro Fellowship Ministries, Crossroads, those are the on the ground doing the work. It's really the overarching food bank system, the Feeding America system that to me is the most problematic. The people on the ground, on the front lines, working in various places, know what's going on. They understand, but they're caught sometimes in the system. They need to provide. They don't have capacity to do anymore. The other thing is just volunteer regularly with an organization, the same organization, instead of just coming and doing a flyby. Get to know the people, the staff, the issues. You can figure out where you want to get involved. I'll do a shameless plug for my organization. Since we're going to be the only one really doing comprehensive food systems work, you can look for that in the next few months. You can look for programs from North Texas to begin doing garden education and nutrition and cooking education. Also, pay attention to local food policy. There are, I don't know if y'all heard the news the other night, Tuesday night, there was something about Frisco cottage foods issue. That's a policy issue. The cottage foods law was passed last year to allow potentially non-hazardous foods like breads and cake and cookies and jams and jellies to be produced in a home kitchen without inspection to be sold from the home. They took out the farmer's market cost, but to be sold from the home. It's got to be labeled, it's baked in a home, prepared in a home, non-inspected kitchen. A couple other labeling things. Frisco has said, oh no, you can't do that. You can't do that in your home. You have a business in your home. How can you have a business in your home in a residential area? And this is, well, what about Mary Kay? What about other things in our business? Oh no, we don't worry about those. But you can't make food. So that's technically the state law allows it. Technically, they can't really say no to it. They can't put a ban on cottage foods as they've done, as they've tried to do. That's a policy issue. It's kind of a local and state level policy issue. We have issues with property taxes. I have gone around saying you can't get a proper, you get agricultural valuation for agricultural land. It's a lower property tax rate than what we all pay for our homes. And I went around saying, oh, you can't get one in the city limits if you live in, an urban setting. Well, that's not true, but it's information that's being spread by certain people because the cities don't really want to do it. They'll say, oh, no, you can't do that. Well, technically, by state law, you can. They just don't want to use the tax rate. And the law's there for a good reason. The kind of the understanding that you can't have ag exemptions or ag valuations in cities because developers were coming in and fencing land and growing corn or putting a couple cows out there and saying, oh, we're going to make millions off this in a few years, but right now we're not going to pay property tax on it, so we're going to put it in ag, as they said. So that's why it's difficult. But what it does is it creates barriers for farming, to local farming. So we need to look at those issues. The Farm Bill's up for reauthorization this year. I don't think I'm told that it's not going to get completed this year because it's an election year and it'll end up getting pushed off. But there is movement. There's a lot of movement from the House committee to cut the food stamp spending by millions, which is not a good thing. It just puts more people at greater risk than they're already. So I've seen in some of these smaller things that people's responses to government, stating their case, really does work. I mean, I know we say that and a lot of people are involved in local politics, but it really does make a difference when you speak up on these farming and food issues. So a couple of groups to watch are Farm and Ranch Freedom Alliance, the Community Food Security Coalition, Food and Water Watch is a good one. The Food Research Action Committee, FRAC, has been around for a long time. They monitor policy on the federal nutrition programs. So we need our voices to be heard, and we need to be supporting our local communities and the food insecure communities and trying to figure out ways that we can make that better. And we can reduce the numbers, we can create more self-reliance within the community so that our communities are stronger, so that we have more productive parts of our growth. So our communities are more productive parts of our society. So that's what I have. It's been somewhat helpful, maybe overwhelming.
I was going to say too,
Farm and Ranch Freedom Alliance, the Community Food Security Coalition, Food and Research Action Committee, Food and Water Watch. Another good one is the American Farmland Trust. There's some others, National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition, I think that's what it's called.
Are they lobbying groups?
Some of them are simply advocacy groups, some of them are lobby groups, and some of them have both.
Do you belong to those?
I'm involved with the Farm and Ranch Freedom Alliance and the Community Food Security Coalition. I follow the others, I'm not really actively involved in those right now.
If you'd like to give me some links, I can put it in.
Okay. I can give you some links. Did you have a question, Annie?
You know that I'm interested in Northaven having a community garden. And so if I would brought that to the trustees, what, besides yourself, is you would do it? Who would you turn to for some guidance about, what you need to do, how you go about it, your urban people, where cities up and down.
Well,
Sort of like what do we have to do to start?
right. The question is about starting a community garden and how do you do that, what are the parts of it, and what do you need to do. There's, I personally, if I was about to do training in 2 weeks that includes some of that stuff, I would say Amanda Hoosier, who is with the Coppell Community Gardens and Coppell Farmers Market, is a great resource person to think through. She does a great job of helping groups think through how they're going to run their community garden, because there's different ways to do it, what it's going to look like. And then there are some other people resources within the city to do the soil and building beds and all those kind of things. You can do those beds.
But
So,
when you see, I don't know whether, when I say community garden for Northaven, that Northaven would be the land place, but hopefully that it would involve
the community, right. The community garden really should be for, yes, for the neighborhood.
Yeah. And are the ones that you're familiar with have little individual plots in them that belong to different things?
Right. Usually they're individual raised beds of whatever configuration you decide on, and each person often pays a plot fee, an annual fee. They're going to have that helps defer water costs and whatever. Also kind of makes people accountable to the fact that they've signed up for this. So that's usually how it works. The Lake Highlands Community Garden has 2,000 square foot donation space that volunteers come in and work on, and all of it gets donated. And then they ask if anybody has a surplus, then they can donate that too. It's done in places.
I was just going to share with you that Farmers Ranch has created a community garden using land from Jack Holding Church. They have formed a partnership, and Pam Smith is from the Farmers Ranch Trust Service that is coordinating it currently. They have 60 plots plus a orchard. They have a composting area and so forth. The master gardeners come and help teach people like you and I who don't know anything about it, gardening, and have put us on the way, put it on the way. It's now been 3 years since it has been in use, and 20%, you agree that 20% of your harvest will go to the trust. And we pick twice a week and take it over ourselves. And the week of Easter, we produced 100 tons of food. And that was early in the season.
Right.
This is my first year of being involved, so I'm really very, very excited about it. But I also know that Nathan Adams Elementary School has started a community garden on their property, and St. Luke's Episcopal also has a community garden on
A
their
lot of the Episcopal churches various forms.
I'm interested in the co-op gardening because am not always in town, and if I had my own lot, it would be hard to, dedicate myself to that. But in other parts of the country, I see that they have co-op gardening where you can volunteer to work on the whole as many hours as you have, and if you're out of town, for 2 weeks, but then you come back, you can work on it when you're there.
Right.
And then, divvy it up as free. But do you know anything like that? I just hear about community gardens are okay and what they're going on.
There are probably as many ways as you could come up with to make it work. There's probably a program to do that. It can be however the people agree to do it is the way to do it. Yeah, it's probably difficult to identify maybe a program that's a project or something else that operates this way, but you won't be able to figure out if they operate that way. And there are lots of ways to figure out. I don't know of any in Dallas that are doing anything like that, but I think it's, you all have to agree that that's the way it works and it will work.
Is there any kind of, I guess I'd call it, green rating for restaurants in Dallas in terms of the quality of food, the organic, how much food they throw away, and the huge issue?
Is
anybody taking that on?
No, nobody's taking that on. I heard about a guy who's working on an app, an application for your smartphone to identify that would kind of collect where the restaurants that have local produce and kind of unique things like that, vegan, vegetarian menus, those kinds of things that you could, wherever you go, you could find those. But I haven't heard of anybody that's working on, I can tell you some of the places that I know that are using local foods, but Eat Green DFW probably right now is a website that's probably got the best listing of restaurants. Eat Green DFW, all one word. I think they've got a list of places that they kind of recommend, but that's the only place. It's not really.
Is that okay?
Yeah. Bolsa in Oak Cliff. Bolsa restaurant. The Great over on Greenville Avenue. Brian Musher's the chef over there. He's a great guy. Central 214. These are all kind of pricey places, but Central 214 is another good place. Parigi is very supportive in the community. Actually, one of the chefs at Parigi, and both of the owner and the chef are involved in Cafe Momentum, which is a project of the Dallas Youth Village that is they're working on creating not just a culinary training program, but a restaurant, so that the young men that are coming out of juvenile detention services can go into the culinary training program, and then they can spend a year-long internship working at Cafe Momentum in all parts of the restaurant, and they'll have volunteer chefs come in every month and spend time with these guys. And so once they leave, they're going to leave not only with experience in all parts of the restaurant, they're going to leave with 12 references from local chefs. So that's, to me, that rate's high. They're going in that, and a lot of local chefs are. Celebration would be one. Celebration would be another good one. Oh, I can't think. There's some others, but I'm not so
What about grocery stores that provide green local growing, any like chain grocery stores?
not. Whole Foods probably actually does the best as far as buying from Texas growers, and they're pretty good about marketing it. But if it's Texas, it's going to be on the label. You can look on the labels of the food you buy to find out where they're running. And in this day and age, not only do you have country of origin, but you'll have, if it's Texas, it'll say where it's from. Usually it'll say what state it's from.
You can go to Costco's and those places like that, and the sausages, if it's made in Texas, they'll have that stamp.
Right, but if you're talking fruits and vegetables, it's harder to find right now. I think that'll change. Go to farmers market. But here in Northaven, the Green Spot is awesome. Coppell Farmers Market is great. McKinney's pretty good. If you live ever up that way, in that part. Celebration has a little market, also a good place. And there are a few others that are popping up. The problem we're facing right now is that everybody wants a farmer's market, but we have a limited number of producers that are actually doing what they need to be doing. So we're getting to the point where they can't be everywhere, and our production's not enough, and so it's going to be tough for a few years.
Yeah, actually, I've got a couple of. One is ask us to hold the thought of we don't value our food enough, and I'd like to hear what you've got to say on that. And the other thing is, I know you had an experience earlier this week doing some testifying. I'd like to hear about that.
When I said what the thought about we don't value our food, is really kind of thinking, and I kind of changed. I changed exactly what I said, but just kind of remembering that idea, because I was going to switch to different things. But I don't think we do value our food. Our food's become cheap. It's become easy to get access to food, some kind of food, even if it's not good food. And so there's a loss of that perceived value because it's not, I think we pay 9%, 10% of our income on food, and a lot of places pay, a lot of countries, industrialized countries pay more than that. So there's a higher value on the food dollar-wise. But that has to do, I mean, if you're going to buy local, a lot of times you can get really good deals on local stuff because it doesn't come very far. But sometimes you can pay more for quality things. You pay more in a restaurant for something that's quality. But you also get better food. So you're putting something that's better in your body. So it should have a little bit better value.
Well, they don't have supermarkets in a lot of
That's true. They don't have supermarkets in
on
every
every
country.
corner
Yeah.
where you buy in little shops.
True.
And you go to the grocery, you go to the bread factory, and you go. And that's the way people go to the world. A lot of the world, yeah.
A lot of the world does function by not just going to the supermarket where you can get everything. You can go to the little shops, the individual shops. And I think that's going to become more. We have some bakeries around that are Empire Bakery, Village Baking Company. There's a gluten-free bakery that's Company Cafe is another restaurant I recommend also. They carry this gluten-free bakeries products. The Garden Cafe in East Dallas, they're genius. It's tucked back away off of Munger and Genius. It's great, good food. And they have a little garden in the back that they really well from. Earlier in the week, Tuesday, the state public health committee and the state's human services committee of the House met to hear interim charges. So when the legislature's not meeting, they have hearings where they investigate certain things that they want to know more about. And those two joint committees were having a hearing on food access, healthy food access, a little bit on urban agriculture. They didn't really talk a lot about food deserts, and they were looking at the feasibility of putting nutritional requirements on the snack, on food stamps, which is really a federal issue, but they said it's being talked about in everything you're reading, so we want to know more about it. It was an interesting, very long day. It was supposed to start at 10 o'clock, started about 10:30. They had the three different kind of topic areas. They had two panels of 3 to 4 people each on those panels. So 2 panels per topic, 3 to 4 people, each of them got to say something, and then they asked questions, and some of it got very long and tedious. But one of the interesting things that happened was the question about mobile chicken processing, mobile slaughterhouses, or I guess it was on-farm chicken processing, and feral hogs came up. And so they kind of inserted another group of people to talk about this issue. So the reason that that's important is because to have a slaughterhouse, you have to have a USDA inspected facility. And if you slaughter over a year, then you have to have an inspector on site when you're slaughtering. These are all federal and state regulations. It's all very complex and complicated. So basically, the small farms are very, very limited in where they can take their animals for processing. I heard about one rancher that was taking their cattle from on the other side of Tyler all the way to Grandview to working beef because that's the only place they can take it. People go from here up to Oklahoma to have it processed because they're so limited. So what the farmers are wanting to do, not without regulation, but what they're wanting to be able to do is slaughter on the farm with the right setup. Be able to do it open air and that kind of thing. The Department of State Health Services doesn't understand that raising food and animals involves open air dirt on a regular basis. And some food. And there's ways around it that don't have to be unrealistic. So there's a little bit of a battle going on. But it's very important if we want access to affordable chicken and meat, we need to be able to have smaller scale processors that are regulated in reasonable ways so we do ensure food safety, but they're accessible to the growing number of, because we're going to be able to have a lot of ranches, smaller grass-fed pasture poultry operations because of the nature of North Texas.
Is that federal or is that state?
It's both federal and state regulations. It's a little complex. I don't understand it all, but I know that they're both state and federal. The state refers back to the feds, and then so-and-so has jurisdiction here, and somebody else has jurisdiction over here, and it's a little complicated. That's part of the problem, is it's so complicated.
It's the problem about the federal laws, so they're talking about the slaughter of them.
They did. The question came up about feral hogs, and that we have this overpopulation of feral hogs that are destroying crops. And one of the representatives asked, why can we not process feral hogs for donation of food bank? I've actually been talking around that question since 2004 or so. And nobody's ever gotten a different reason. Well, the definitive answer, at least from the other day, was that the way swine are classified by the federal government, they have to be brought live to the slaughter facility, tested, killed, and processed, and then tested again, or killed and tested again, to be tested twice for disease. But if you're doing it for yourself and for family, then there are no regulations. You can kill it right away and process it, kind of like beer. There's Joe Salatin, I don't know if y'all remember, he has this big sustainable farming guru in Virginia, and he makes a statement about, this great statement about, I can kill a deer, throw it in the back of my truck, take it to my house, hang it up in the garage or in the shed all weekend, and then slaughter and process it when I get ready, but I can't take the sausage I made in a clean facility, in my clean kitchen, I can't take that and sell it to my own. And it's some of this really crazy kind of regulations that we get into. But feral hogs could be a good source of protein if you have none. It would take care of a problem for the farmers, but we can't get caught by the federal regulations to be able to take care of that.
Maybe one more question.
One more question?
Yeah, I love hearing that you say across the country there's more community gardens, more small micro farms happening, and we have changed from a agrarian society to an urban society. There's less people farming. My grandmother's family in the Depression was very poor, but they worked and lived on the farm, and they never were hungry. Do you think that access to fresh produce is more a problem of money, or as we were just talking about, policy and attitudes?
I think it's a lot of policy and attitudes and knowledge. I think there's a group of people who grew up with having to work in the garden and they never are outside in the fields and they never wanted to do it again. There's a group that have very pleasant memories of their grandmother's garden and they would like to be able to do it again. There's actually a provision in the SNAP program that ways, if people have the resources and the knowledge to grow in a container on their patio, in their backyard, understand how to cultivate the soil a little bit to get a decent production of basic, tomatoes and squash and okra, things that grow easily, that are tasty and a lot of times culturally appropriate, and then know how to prepare them so that they taste good. People would be doing it. And there's always an issue for a lot of folks about time and learning skills like meal planning and food preparation that they've never learned. And how do you do that with not very many pots and pans in your kitchen? So there's some learning issues, there's some education that can happen that will make a big difference. Because I think there's a desire to be able to grow your own, to have that feeling of self-sufficiency. I think that in a lot of people that would be very fulfilling for them. Whether it's down the street at the community garden, whether it's in their backyard or in the patio.
Thank you. Thanks.